And welcome back, rugby fans. Of course, it's that familiar time where myself and the team get together to share all the latest news from around the pitch here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. You'll also have an opportunity to hear from our ranters. We're going to be introducing two new faces, fresh blood. That's right, Rob.
Rookies.
Right,
it's rookie
exactly.
night.
They earned their first Rugby Rant cap here with the team today. So without further ado, we're going to make sure that we give all this to you and more, starting with Around the Pitch. So, Rob, we have the honors of going back and forth on this one as Scott Ferrara stepped out for today, and it gives us a free run at the field. So let's give us an opportunity here to remind everybody that myself and Rob, we're going to fire away, quick fire round, what we think is interesting that fans might have not necessarily paid close enough attention to, or something that might have flown under the radar, or something that we just think you should know about nevertheless. So we're going to start this off, and in fact, Rob, I think I'm going to start this one off for the first time here. We can break all the rules now that Scott's not here, right?
Anything we want, man.
Anything we want. We're already both winners because he's not here.
That's right. That's right.
So the first thing I wanted to be able to highlight as we continue the theme of MLR 50 Cap Club continues to be able to add new members week after week. It's just been a season of milestones in season 5 of Major League Rugby. And for two more people, they have entered that club. Paul Ciulini. I butchered that one. Paul Ciulini from the Toronto Arrows. Now, first of all, this guy, absolute workhorse, right there in the engine room. One of those forwards that's certainly been a part of what they do right from the start with the Toronto Arrows. But his honors go well beyond there to be able to receive 8 caps for Canada. Just to give you an idea of how much effort this guy has put in, how important he is to the Arrows organization. I was looking at the stats, Rob. 50 of the last 54 of all 54 matches the Toronto Arrows have competed in MLR, he has been in that match. 50 out of 54, right? He's only missed 4 games in the history of that side, so definitely deserves his honors. And then next up, Devon Short. Now, I know you're happy to be able to hear this name, Rob, because, of course, he has found his way at NOLA, but it all began, of course, in San Diego. What I think is phenomenal about Devon Short that people might not realize, this guy has already entered into the 50 cap club, but he's only 23 years old. He might be the youngest one on the list too, Rob. So, I mean, I'm sure you agree that, you know, he's got a long, long career ahead, and he might be the first 100 cap club if we manage to keep him here on U.S. soil. But let's hand it over to Rob to hear what else he has to share.
Yeah, you mentioned Devon Short. I'm actually wearing my NOLA Gold jersey in honor of Devon Short and in honor of Cam Dolan, who were, in my mind, he was an absolute Iron Man this season. He played in every game, played just about every minute. So we have to be proud of a few things down there, NOLA, and both those guys are part of that. But I want to talk a bit about my Around the Pitch segment. First of all, the MLR has just released information regarding homegrown player identification in the draft. Details are not that clear, and I got to give a little credit to the Goff report because he put this out there. But apparently, it takes a player who is declared as a homegrown player out of the draft process. Now, I can't go into a lot of detail. I actually had a parent of a player that's going to be out in the draft call me a few weeks ago, and the player had the option of being declared as a homegrown talent by the club that they have been involved in the academy process with. And so the club was letting the player identify whether they wanted to go into the draft or whether they wanted to be identified as their homegrown talent. And again, the parent was asking me my thoughts and what I would suggest, or what I would think that the parent would do, and probably called me because, again, I'm a parent of a rugby player in college, so wanted another parent's perspective, but somebody who knew the league. Again, information's not clear, But what is clear is these players have to be someone that's been developed and had resources put into them, like an academy team. Here are the concerns. How many exemptions does a team get? Right? That could be an issue. You're going to identify 10, 15 guys. I mean, that seems a little much, but do they want to dump resources to players who they know might get away from them? So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And then what does a team have to do to show that they put development and resources into a player? What proof do they have to have? Some other teams might want to draft a player and maybe have to say, hey, show me proof that you put resources into that player. Is it just simply on a roster, name on a roster, or what? So expect details to come out, but it's going to be some interesting.
That sounds like you're setting up a pretty good rant for later on, because there's a couple of different angles, depending on how things are shared and how well it's communicated as well, what the expectations are. It could have pros and cons like anything else. So it'll be an interesting debate to be able to unravel maybe down the road. So thanks for sharing that one there. And of course, we on the Rugby Rant, if you're not aware, continue year after year to be one of those great sources that will cover it live during the draft. It's something we did for the first one. It's something we did for we'll do again this year. So stick around because, of course, you follow us online. You'll know first what that date is and how we'll be sharing that. So, of course, we'll be staying very close to that subject where Rob himself finds that very important. As he said, he's so connected to college level rugby through not only through his own son, but through many of his friends as well. So let's continue forward as we dive into the news that, well, for the first time, we're talking about history here. For the first time, the MLR Championship final will move to the East. This is something really interesting as it steps away from its traditional, I suppose that's what you can call it if it's been in the West most of the time. And that's because of an upset from the Seawolves, who unexpectedly managed to be able to take down their competition, or the LA Guiltinis, at home in the Coliseum, which before that match, most people predicted would be where the final was a second time around. That, of course, the Guiltinis were the reigning champions, but that story ended shortly once that final whistle had blown this past weekend with Seattle serving the upset against the Guiltinis, which means that this will now be shared between the Free Jacks, Rugby ATL, or possibly Rugby New York. One of them will decide the next home for the MLR Championship final. So stick around. That'll be decided this coming weekend. Rob, what else do you have to share with our fans?
Well, you know me, I like to talk a little bit about development of rugby, especially at the youth levels. And so I'm going to just talk about something here locally. Again, may not have national appeal, but I would suggest that this is something that might be a model for regional high school developmental side. So the Illinois Tornadoes is a select side here in Illinois. I've coached and been involved with the Illinois Tornadoes in the past. They are, again, having some ID camps here coming up this week. Preston is actually going to be a backs coach, and John McGurk, who is the head coach of the D1 championship winning Glen Ellen Ducks, ranked 40 in the nation right now. He's going to be the head coach. Again, you can go to the MLR Fan Zone and look back. John talked a little bit about their victory when he interviewed them last weekend live. Nevertheless, they're going to be playing the Minnesota Selects in Illinois on June 18th. So in about a week and a half, 2 weeks there. And then they're going to go up to Wisconsin and they play in what's called the Cody Cup. It's been an ongoing tradition, kind of a grudge match between the Wisconsin Selects and the Illinois Tornado Selects. That'll be on June 26th. So I'm kind of actually working on seeing if I can get some live coverage of the Illinois match. Potentially, I got to see if I can get some of that on TRN. We'll see. Crossing my fingers, I can make those connections and make that happen. And hopefully get more publicity for rugby here in Illinois.
And that is what TRN is doing now when you've got these state finals championships being shared. And we hope to be able to see even more of that. That's something that you've championed before, that we need to see more and more of that level of the game being shared on a platform like TRN. So let's dive into my last one over here. We're going to stay on the theme of rugby development, but this time we're going to go to the under-18s, the U20s, and the U23 national side, as it has recently been announced by USA Rugby that they will participate in an international summer series, now known as the Clarendon Series, which will take place in Amsterdam against, well, there's going to be 5 competitors. The nations of Canada, the US will take up the reins for North America, and then the European contingent will include the Czech Republic, Netherlands itself, of course, Holland, and then Belgium. Now, all of these sides have been recognized as great areas of development for rugby, but in particular, youth development. So it's going to be a wonderful way to be able to expand that and to build on some of those rugby traditions of Europe and bringing in that North American competition for the lads here to be able to get some much needed experience overseas. And that's what it's all about, right? Well, you can't get better without playing more competition and playing more rugby and getting out there on the field. So the U18s and the U20s will participate in 3 match days. The tickets are as little as only $7.50 and up to $15 for the whole weekend. It's really nothing. If you are in that neck of the woods, it's great to be able to see some support, but you might even be able to have the opportunity to view it online through the streaming services of Flow Rugby. That is still yet to be determined, but if you have that opportunity, do Rugby a favor and tune in for a few moments. Once they see how many people are watching, they'll continue to be able to show more of it. And that means that we have more footage to be able to show the talent that America and Canada has. So let's leave it there for now. And that is what we know and you know as what we call Around the Pitch. And we're going to be back in just a moment.
I have one more.
You have one more? See,
I have one more.
I get so used to being the guy that takes it out. I think I did
Ends
it
it all. That's right.
As well. So I'm just being fair. I got to do it to you as well.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about USA and Canada development. I'm going to talk about USA and Canada women, who just recently participated in the first leg of the Pacific 4 series. Canada won 36-5, put on a pretty good display. It was in New Zealand, so we know that there are going to be successive games here coming up. I'll talk about those in a moment. Absolute rain-soaked affair. It was posted on Facebook, so you can go back. I think it was on the World Rugby's Facebook page. You can go back and watch the match. There were a lot of handling errors, as we can expect when there's a torrential downpour. Canada really used their forwards really well. They scored their first try to open scoring up with a kick to the corner and your traditional rolling maul that scores with your power forwards getting in there and putting it down. That was Olivia Demarchant on the try. USA was expected to have a lot of speed. They brought a fairly young team. I think there were 5 new caps on the team. A lot of their players and a few of the Canadian players are still playing in Europe. They weren't released for the international window. But that the weather slowed down the US's speed. So what do we have coming up in the successive week here? June 11th, there's going to be 2 games, USA versus Australia, 8:15 Eastern time here in the States and in Canada. And then Canada and New Zealand will be on the same day, June 11th, just about 2 hours and a half later at 10:45 Eastern time. So hopefully they'll have those posted on their Facebook page and the World Rugby Facebook page so everybody can watch the women compete. So expect to see some great competition. Canada's ranked 3rd, so they're looking pretty strong.
Right, and of course, this is all a precursor to the World Cup coming up. So this is laying that foundation, much needed experience gained very quickly with this new series that's been introduced. So we hope that fans just like you and I will tune in to be able to watch that as it continues to be able to grow the sport, one fan at a time. And as you know, that's what we do here on the Rugby Rant, week after week with your help. And we also do so with the help of some sponsors. So we'll be back shortly for the next and first rant of this episode here, episode 98, but not before you hear from one of our sponsors.
With over 37 years of experience, American Rugby Outfitters have been dedicated to providing quality rugby gear to those who like to get dirty. The ARO team prides itself in delivering the highest quality rugby gear that will withstand the punishment rugby dishes out. Brands such as Adidas, Barbarian, Gilbert, Canterbury, and ProTech will deliver when the game gets tough. Whether you need team uniforms, boots, bags, field equipment, or swag for the Postmaster Social, ARO is your source for quality rugby gear. They can set up your club or business with a team store like they did for us to ensure every member looks as good as the pros. If the international game is your vibe, ARO will carry you across the line with officially licensed gear from the Eagles, Springboks, All Blacks, England, Ireland, and Wales, amongst others. Visit rugbygear.com and check out all that the folks from American Rugby Outfitters have to offer. Use the code RANT15 to get a 15% discount site-wide. As an added bonus, when the items in your cart are $100 or more, you get free shipping to anywhere in the continental United States. Don't forget to check out our line of Rugby Rant gear available exclusively at rugbygear.com. Don't forget to use RANT15 to get 15% off your order site-wide. American Rugby Outfitters, dedicated to the toughest demands in the world's toughest game.
Hey everybody, just a cautionary tale here prior to today's rant. We'd like to remind everybody that we record on Tuesdays and we release on Thursdays. It gives myself and the boys a chance to edit our episode for proper release. Obviously, the nature of this week's topic, the disqualification of Gilchrist-owned teams from the playoffs, has taken on a more and greater significance because on Tuesday we did learn, after recording the episode, that the second Gilchrist team has been eliminated or disqualified from the playoffs, and that would be the Giltinis. So we appreciate your support, but we would ask for just a little bit of patience here as the topics discussed has not changed, and certainly some of the implications have not changed. They've just taken on a greater significance when you're talking about two Gilchrist-owned teams being impacted by the most recent decision. So as always, we appreciate your support. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, the Rugby Rant seeks to grow rugby one fan at a time.
And welcome back, rugby fans. It's that time again. The part that you all love and have made us famous for is the rugby debates. That is what we call the rants. So again, if you are tuning in for the first time, let me tell you how it works. Each one of these gentlemen here are going to compete against each other with the topic at hand to be what we crown as the top ranter. How do they win that? Well, they simply need to bring forth the best argument, lay out the best points, and at the end of that, we'll find which one makes the most sense. Who decides that? Me, as the host for today's activities. And I remind you, my name is Ty Braga, host for today's action. Joining me is Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. In absence of Scott Ferrara, we brought in two guns, right? That's right. We've got William Cully, all the way from Northern Ireland, who is also claims to be one of the top New York supporters. Like I said, we upgraded from Scott and we got William Cully. William, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Free upgrade.
Great upgrade. I like it. And man, a few words stern and strong. I like it. Very unlike.
He's a rookie and I already like him better than Scott.
Yeah. I already knew this was going to go well. Joining us as well, we got Alexander Diegel. Now, Alexander, if you're not familiar, you might not recognize his face, but you probably know his writings because this man is certainly one of those that is bringing us all the know as one of the top national reporters for the Rugby Network, in addition to his own playing career that includes in the past the Houston SaberCats and also preseason games against Nolo. So really, we have you and your mates to be able to thank for Nolo's success, right?
Yeah, basically, we gave them that first tune-up, that very first game in their history. So yeah, they're welcome for that. Just had to give them a little run.
Yeah, absolutely. All that little magic you bestowed upon them. So the gentlemen here, once again, are going to be talking about the topic at hand. What is that? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that here on the Rugby Rant pod, we're going to be talking about the speculation that surrounds the recent news that the AGs have been disqualified for the remainder of the season. That means they lose out on their postseason opportunity, which certainly would have easily recognized them with a pathway through onto greater honors, having finished the season technically at 58 points, 4 points above their nearest competition on any of the logs. So it's maybe a bittersweet end for those fans and players, but we're here to be able to talk about what led to that decision. Now, before we jump into it, we're going to give each of these gentlemen a chance to talk about it. They can come at it at any angle they like to be able to share what they think is important, what we should take note of as fans, and help shed some light on it, perhaps. But it is important to note that Major League Rugby itself has not offered any further explanation except to be able to say that there was a violation of some sort in the league rules. That has left a lot of speculation that has gone across social media. We're here to be able to think what that could be. And to start us off, we hand it over to William Cully.
Thanks, guys. So on the issue, obviously there's a lot of assumptions at the minute that it's basically, like I think it's something to do with salary caps. But I don't know for sure. But to me, at this stage of the season, I know that there's rules and you have to abide by rules, and that's important. But to me, I think the impact on the team, after all the hard work of the staff and the players and the supporters and everything, I thought it was a wee bit harsh, especially not to release any information on what the problem actually was. So I think I was disappointed to see that, especially at this far on in the season, to be honest. Looking at it from over here, where I am looking at the league, I watch the league quite closely. I participate in the groups quite actively. Major League Rugby's getting more noticed here. It's not widespread. Obviously, the more keen rugby fans locally would be more aware of it. Anybody that I've spoke to in the type of more advanced rugby level here, maybe from the guys in the rugby, Ulster Rugby or something, I definitely see that the Major League Rugby is on their radar. So, no doubt this will come across them as well. Because, obviously the league is starting to get a lot of Irish players and players from the UK and stuff traveling over. So, and like one of the reasons, if it is a salary cap issue, that has pros and cons, so if you're trying to grow a league, the guys have played very well. It's been a very enjoyable season to watch them. Don't think that should have been punished, to be honest, if that was the reason, because look at what it resulted in. I understand that you want to try and grow domestic players. I'm very, very keen to see that. I'd love this. I think US Rugby is a sleeping giant, and I've been watching it for 20 years since I was a teenager. But, trying to grow the domestic game is going to need influx of talent, and talent costs money. So talent costs money, and not even to talk about what the experience that the domestic players will get from those guys. So it's a real balancing act. Is it a big deal? Is it not a big deal? From me watching afar, I like watching the local players. I want to see 13, 14 players on a pitch being from the US, even in Canada. But, at the same time, I want to see big names going over there. I want to see, your Chris Robshaws and all the Ben Fodens and all the rest of them who go over there to help try and boost the game. So if you have salary caps, you're going to limit that. And especially when the team's performing so well, I think it was a bit harsh if that was the reason. I can't really understand what else it may be. But that's kind of where I sit on it. But I'm on the other side of the fence that I think, with positive play and positive performance, and obviously a big, strong rugby operations there and well-financed, I wouldn't punish it from my perspective. And I think the local community in Austin, like all season, it was mentioned early on in the season that all their promotion and all the hype and the buzz and the online content they did, it was fantastic. You know what I mean? So, this is very disappointing end of the season after all that, for me anyway. So,
yeah. And there's a lot of people that would agree with you that certainly it's disappointing for a couple of different reasons. It's disappointing that we have to be able to punish a team that has certainly done well, a lot to be able to elevate the sport, the players, the fans. There's a lot to be able to lose. There's a lot of reason to be disappointed, but it seems like you certainly feel more than most of the reasons out there that it's most likely connected to the salary cap. But I love
it's an assumption. It's an assumption.
It's your assumption. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who might agree with that assumption, though, too. There's been a lot of speculation online through this MLR fan zone group, through the specific fan groups as well, and I'm curious to hear what the rest of the gang might think here. So let's hand it over to Alex.
Yes, thank you, Ty, and thank you for that intro. To be clear, it's the two MLR preseason games I played in. I don't want to be accused of taking any stolen valor there, but now on to the task at hand. Yeah, so as soon as the news broke, as you said in the intro, I'm a national reporter, so I've got contacts with all the teams across the league, both official and just kind of, I guess you could say, satellite contacts. So I started beating down doors, trying to find out everything I could on the record, off the record. So I put this somewhere in between assumption and fact, between on who I've talked to. So yeah, I can pretty much say it is salary cap issues. What I've been told is the violation specifically pertained to teams can have 2 on-capped players per team, and that Austin had more than those 2 on-capped players. So when I say on-capped, I mean players that aren't going to affect the salary cap. So that was what I was told, that they had more than that allotment, and therefore the hammer, no pun intended, Rob, was dropped upon them. And yeah, does it feel harsh? Yes, but that's on the outside looking in, right? Maybe they were warned once, twice, 3 times. They ignored. That one's purely speculation. Nobody's told me that.
Oh, but it's a definite possibility.
It's a definite possibility. Just kind of putting the fighting in the devil's corner on the league side there, because I think everybody thinks it seems to be harsh, but maybe there were warnings given. We just don't know about them. Mm-hmm. Where I come from, like I said, it's all somewhere between speculation and fact there. Where I come from, and outside of my reporting background, I do have a little bit of PR and crisis management. And it's just, from the league's PR standpoint, it's PR 101 to get out in front of it and control the narrative, right? Because if you don't control the narrative, then you have people like me, you have people just online,
spreads like wildfire,
spreading rumors, guessing, doing their best to try to be internet sleuthers.
Hey, that's our best work on you.
The unfortunate thing is, because now, if this was kind of a one-off, then you kind of say, okay, it's a growing league. Unfortunately, and you'll never find a bigger proponent for the league and wanting just rugby to be successful in America than me. The unfortunate thing is now there's a track record of not getting out in front of these crises. You look back to earlier this season with Rugby ATL, right? Like, what broke back-to-back with very little information? Scott Lawrence stepped down, a player unnamed at that time.
Yeah, change of ownership. Yeah.
What happened with the internet rumors, right? People were like, oh, are these connected? Was Scott covering for the person who's now suspended? This is one of the most respected men in USA Rugby that, through no fault of his own, and we'd have found out those 2 things were not related at all. Through no fault of his own, his name was getting kind of dragged through the mud, is that he might have been covering for this player that was suspended.
Yeah, you bring us some really good points there. Sorry, finish your thought.
All right, I was just going to say, you're a professional league. Unfortunate, as you're growing, crises are going to happen. Yeah. The important thing is to get out there and tell the story so that people know, so that things aren't getting worse by not saying anything.
Right. And there's so many people that would agree with you, myself and Rob included, that we've honestly several times spoken about transparency being one of the key things to be able to create and fix in MLR. Fans wanted this. It goes back even farther to other seasons. We were at the front of trying to be able to share the expansion team of Kanaloa when that debate was going on, and their expansion bid, and then it was in, and then it wasn't, and then there was this, and then there was that. Fans, rightly so, deserve more. Right. Sure. And if you want them to be engaged and invested in the league, share this with them. Don't keep them in the dark. They're so passionate that they want to be able to learn more. What do you expect they're going to do? As you pointed out, Alex, they're going to head onto the online communities. They're going to fuel this fire. They're going to come up with a speculation. The wheel's going to keep turning. The rumor mill is going to work in hyperdrive. But you have the ability to control the story just by sharing the right information. Now, there's a legal implication to it. I don't know. Again, you can still share something. So it seems like that comes as one of the biggest takeaways in your piece there, that I'm enjoying that you brought it into the limelight here, that you made it stand out. The second thing is that you agreed that you believe, like William, it is probably related to the salary cap. And again, that echoes what many people online are also saying. So while it's the rumor mill, there must be some truth to it. And where there's smoke, there's often fire. So
lawyers.
Hand it over to
lawyers.
And lawyers.
And lawyers, like I said, there's probably illegal stuff there,
Yeah.
certainly. And then also you got to throw in the fact that if one has been caught, you got to do a whole league-wide audit too. So everybody's going to be dragged through the mud. All of their books are going to be opened up. Everybody's going to share everything. Who knows what else we find, right? So let's hand it over to Rob Hammerschmidt. I didn't mean to take the limelight no longer than I had it.
No worries. So getting into this, first of all, I'd like to pick up where Alex left off a bit in the sense that what's the perception, and Will talked a little bit about it from the European sense there in Ulster, Northern Ireland. But, I think one of the most frustrating things, and I love the MLR, and I'm one of the biggest proponents. I just really felt like during that COVID year where there was kind of time away from the game, that there could have been a lot of things put in place to determine operationally how the league was going to move forward when things like this happen. It was a great opportunity to identify what are your values, how are you going to deal with problems, what are you going to, what's going to be at the core of how you operate as an institution. We know that the NFL has problems in this regard, right? They've had it, and they time and time again step on their own feet. So having said that, I think my frustration is the lack of clarity and information that's coming out. Now, I want to be careful here because I would say this. I don't need to know all the details. I don't need to know the names of the players. I don't need to know how much they're over the cap. Tell me what rule they broke, what policy was violated. Tell me that, the team had been warned on numerous occasions, and as a result, here's this heavy, what many people deem to be a heavy-handed consequence. So I think that's where I would come at it, right? Give us some basic information that prevents us from speculating about, auxiliary cap issues, potentials for, where gift cards handed out and that created some salary issues, because those were all the rumors going around in the internet. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on to the litigation and rumor, and there's an injunction. That stuff takes time, and yet time is not something that the league has on their side because there's going to be playoffs this weekend that would have implications for a few teams, including the AGs, if they were allowed to be involved. So I'm just going to suggest this. I guess I would say, okay, Gilly, if indeed there is any kind of litigation, he's, asked for an injunction, he's hired his lawyers, make a deal. Gilly, have your two teams play. The AGs and the Giltinis play against one another. I don't care where it is. Put it at the home, the AGs, maybe the penalties at the Coliseum, whatever. They play each other, and then the winner of Houston and Seattle play one another, and that's the conference final. And that way there's some face saved for both sides, and you eliminate maybe some legal challenges that could cause a lot of problems, in a PR sense for the league.
It's an interesting idea and an interesting prospect.
The Hammer plan. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get the idea that there's some parity in, AGs and Giltinis, and this has kind of cast a really big shadow across the league, though, too, So how far and wide reaching is it? How deep is it? Once we open up this can of worms, really, where does it end? So, gentlemen, I want to kind of throw it out there. What are some of the bigger consequences, the unintended consequences, as Rob likes to be able to phrase it, of this?
Well, one of the biggest things probably is they're going to start searching for other teams. Is it happening elsewhere? And there's some bigger coaches coming in and different players, and there's obviously, as I said, more people are looking at it now. More people are probably wanting to go over to the America to join the MLR. And if there's issues like this, they're going to start hunting for issues now, and and it'll make it more visible, and it'll make a lot more. It'll make it all a lot more squeamish. I think it's from that type of whistleblower type thing. I think it's a bit of a risk.
Yeah, and this isn't isolated. I also just want fans to know this isn't isolated to Major League Rugby. The Premiership has its most recent scandal with the Saracens. Almost in a similar sort of scenario, not the same, but also I think it was definitely salary cap related, but I can't remember in which way.
Compensation.
But there was definitely infringements in multiple areas. And then only down the road did we discover that there were multiple warnings, there were red flags, there were discussions, and there still weren't corrections, often because they were locked into contracts with those players, and you can't just change them, right?
Right.
But if you look at the quality of some of those players, with paying them that money, you get that talent, and that's what Saracens were doing. Saracens were building a high-performing team, something that was going to win trophies, and unfortunately, obviously, this must have stepped over a line and pushed boundaries, but it's teams are going to do it. It is going to happen. It's inevitable. Do you know what I mean? It's inevitable in every single league. But unfortunately, now this is the first time in MLR. Next year and the year after that, and the year after that, is this going to be something we're going to see more often, especially in a fast-growing league like this?
Yep. Yeah, I'd like to touch on a few of these higher overarching points. I'd like to take 1 minute just to say, just voice my kind of gut-wrenching. I feel for the players. I'll put it that way. I haven't even put that out yet, as I've been trying to put my reporter hat on. But if I putting my boots back on, I would be beyond livid to be one of those players. That has nothing to do with this salary cap management. It has nothing to do with the front office. They've been putting their sweat, blood, and tears on the ground. And as I said before we hopped on, I don't have, I try to keep bias out of it. I really like that Austin team and who I've talked to their official PR guy, their Coach Sam Harris, Isaac Ross, Jamie McIntosh rather, great guys, and that team's really been working to come up and make something of itself after having a few unsuccessful years at the beginning, right? Yeah. Now, as far as kind of keeping it back to our points here, my biggest concerns moving forward are, as you guys touched on, what are we going to do with the rest of the salary cap issues? It's kind of to this point been a known thing of everybody's cheating.
Yeah, you just turned a blind eye because you knew that it was still building the product, right?
Right. Yeah, it was I talked to a player and he's just gotten off the plane and he's shopping for a $60,000 car for his family, and he's like, "Oh, it's a stipend." I'm like, "That's just called buying you a car."
Creative accounting at work.
Right, exactly. So that's been going. So now, what is this violation that's so much worse than everybody else is doing? And now, how are you going to draw the line between that's cheating, that's circumventing the cap too far versus not? It just gets really dangerous, I think, when you just, like I said, drop this hammer to not a fine, not a loss of a draft pick, but disqualification from playoffs as a potential, ended up being the 1 seed.
Yeah.
And secondly, moving forward, from your perspective, William, in Ireland and, just rugby around the world, in talking to these guys, everybody's excited about MLR. It's the great curiosity right now. What does this do, as we're seeing as I just mentioned, 2 New Zealand All Blacks directly involved with this in Jamie and Isaac? What does this do for the world rugby perspective? Who are they going to talk to and say, this is BS. This isn't what I thought it was.
And guys, and one of the things that's obviously it's the white elephant sitting in the corner. Everybody expects in MLR and American rugby that the US was going to be this big money nation at some point. At some stage, everybody's going to be paying massive stadiums in New York and Seattle and and LA and everything else. That was expected. So if there's money issues and salary caps, it'll be one of those things that's easy forgiven because everybody's expecting it. I would be surprised if some team was paying a fortune for players. Good. I hope they do, because I want them to bring in the best players to play with the wee lads around the corner who's going to learn off Quade Cooper and Nanu and people like that there. But it's expected. So I'm surprised they're making a big deal out of a money issue in America.
Well, and I'm going to jump in here. I think, Alex, you brought up a great point. I reached out to Sam Harris just to offer my encouraging thoughts. I didn't want to get into it, didn't want to inquire. It was too raw for me, but I wanted to at least, because I've had many exchanges with him privately, and he's a good man, and I felt awful for him. Fought awful for DeWall, Michael DeWall, who, I know from LU. But, harken back to the show that the AGs put out recently. And what was one of the things that the GM was asked to do when they were making a run for the playoffs and they knew that they were going to be right on the cusp of maybe missing out, is Gilly contacted them and said, let's get another player. Let's get a guy at fullback. Let's bring in somebody who's going to be the difference maker, that X factor that can put us over the hump here as we make this final run. And I forgot. I think it was Sam Harris said, Adam, we can't just do that. That's not how this league works. And so when you think about that now in conjunction with this concept, we saw Brocky come in, we saw Dominguez come in. Are we shocked by this? Now, moving forward, I had a conversation with a GM, and the GM said, I just wish we'd get rid of this auxiliary cap, right? The 500,000.
It's too convoluted and confusing.
Cap.
Yeah,
it's too awkward. Yeah,
right. Because salaries are paid through the league. So while it was salary related, salaries are paid by the league. So we know it wasn't directly salary related. Like, hey, somebody's getting 50,000 and they're only supposed to get 45. That wasn't what's happened, because the league pays those. The league writes the checks. But this GM said basically, give us $100,000, $1 million salary cap, and the league can pay out through that. And then we don't have to house the players. They have a little bit more money to find their own housing, can make their own choices with respect to some of paying those cost of living bills, whatever it is. Just make a cap. That's all. That's what we get. And then we pay it out.
And that is one of the big questions right now among fans is it time to have that serious conversation that we need to be able to raise the salary cap? Now, some people speculate, why do we have a salary cap altogether? There are many merits. There are some cons, certainly in both arguments, in both camps. You'll have good and you'll have bad. But right now, what we have to be able to deal with is what is in place. And I like what Alex had said, is that it's kind of been an unknown, unspoken thing that this has been going on. You can go back to why, the Colorado Raptors decided to be able to exit was for many of these same reasons, right? Mm-hmm. They already saw this coming down the road, that you would not be able to compete against a side that just had deeper pockets than you. It would be about who could buy the best team, not who had to train the best team, which only continues to reinforce the fears from American and Canadian rugby fans that we're not developing our own talent if we keep buying in others. So there's this debate that has swirled around of it, and there's so many different directions, but really at the core of it might be the interesting question: is the salary cap real? And if so, how do we fix it? Right? And those are
that's a rant for another day, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gentlemen, it has been an interesting debate here, though. As we head out of this piece, I want to be able to thank all of you for jumping in and giving us your 2 cents. It has been absolutely valuable, way more than the 2 cents, but you are certainly echoing some of the many fears that rugby fans are having right now. Some of the considerations as to where it may go from here is still yet to be decided. We don't know, but we're going to be following it very closely here on the Rugby Rant, and you can continue to follow us as we learn more under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod on all social media platforms. And of course, you can get our additional content every week on our new home at patreon.com, also under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod. Now I turn my attention to our guests here. William, Alexander, you have both been tremendous guests to be able to have. You've offered some great insight. You've given Rob Hammerschmidt a run for his money. And I want to be able to throw it over to you, as it's a bit of a tradition here on the Rugby Rant with all of our newcomers, with all of our guests. We give the mic back to you for a moment to send a shout out to anybody you think is important, maybe an old rugby club or maybe a special cause you want to draw attention to. William, we'll start with you.
Yeah. No worries, guys. Listen, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was great fun. Just want to make a shout out to, obviously I'm a massive MLR fan, watch it very, very closely, but I just want to give a shout out to the guys in the Tacoma Nomads in Washington. I had the pleasure of playing for them one time. I still support the team from afar, and I hope those guys do well this season and they're training well. But again, thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in and short notice, because Scott couldn't be with us because of an emergency. I got William, and he was an absolute champion and joining us tonight.
Right, no, and it's like 3 a.m.
Keep in mind that he's in the UK, so it's probably about what time is it? 3 a.m.
It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. If I had found it about 2 minutes later, I wouldn't have been here.
But you see, this is a perfect example of great rugby fans, right? 2 a.m. He gets a call like, "Hey, want to join us?" Sure, why not? I love it. I love it. Thank you again. Let's hand
No
over
problem.
to Alexander. Who did you want to send a shout out to? Anything special you think fans should know about?
Sure, absolutely. To my current and hometown club, Old Gaelic Rugby, if the paraphernalia behind me wasn't enough. Also shout out a couple of my former clubs and teams, Potomac Exiles and this Capital Selects, who I mentioned I did play the preseason MLR games with. If I could just selfishly shout out, you want some more rugby scoops, follow me at twitter.com/Alexander Diegel.
Self-promotion is totally allowed here.
Has to be done.
So yeah, absolutely. It's not like Rugby Rant. So again, gentlemen, you know how it goes. It's time to be able to crown a top ranter for today. Now, having listened to all the arguments, it seemed that we all tend to agree that it most likely is pointing in the direction of salary caps, although not necessarily the salary cap itself, but what is outside of that, what is unspoken about, what is not within the boundaries that have been laid out. And have they been laid out and have they actually been communicated? We don't know. But we know one of the important points is we wish there was more transparency from the league. Yeah. For the fans to be able to recognize what is that violation, how do we understand it, and where do we go from here? And does it have even deeper repercussions into the next season? As we can also assume this puts them in last place in the league. I don't think it's officially been decided as such, but that affects their picks in the upcoming draft, perhaps. Who knows, right? We don't know what that might look like for them a couple of months down the road. But what we do know here right now is that we agree that it is most likely linked in some way to the salary caps, and we all agree that it is a shame that the rugby players and fans also have to lose out, and everybody in that organization who has done a great job to be able to build rugby in a new market and, of course, take that club from where it was to something great. So time has come. I'm going to crown a winner, and on this occasion, I'm going to hand it to Alex.
Oh, well.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast. I hope to be on again. Great stuff you guys are putting out, and this was a lot of fun.
Well, I thank you very much again joining us here and sharing your insights. I'm sure that we'll be able to have you and both you and William back shortly. William, I can't promise it'll be at a better time, though.
No problem. That's fine. No worries, boys.
All right, so there you have it, rugby fans. Another great rugby debate in the bag for episode 98 here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. Stick around because we have more as you have the opportunity in our Run, Pass, or Kick interview to learn more about the Collegiate Shield with one of the MLR Insiders, assistant coach to the Utah Warriors, named Nick Colling.
Assistant GM.
I got it right. Of
GM.
course I did. The old, what did you call it? The old man syndrome. It just slips your mind at the last second. Again, stick around because we'll be back after a few words from one of our sponsors. Thank you.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers. It is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and easily accessible for many Chicagoans, as it is just steps away from the metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or a dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And here we are, rugby fans. It's time for the Run, Pass, or Kick interview with your team again here from the Rugby Rant. Now, a quick reminder, Run, Pass, or Kick. All right? That's what I said, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Rob's throwing me off with pointing
No,
here again. This time
I'm pipping us again.
All right. So enough about us and what we do. More importantly, who is here to join us? And now it's been seldom, but we managed to be able to track down one of the great Utah Warriors staff to be able to be here with us today. We have Nick Colling, Assistant General Manager of the Utah Warriors. Nick, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate your podcast. Can't wait to pass a lot and actually kick a lot to both of you. So
I like that. The challenge has been set forward. So again, a quick reminder for those of you that have not seen what we do here on the Run, Pass, or Kick interviews and what makes it interesting, it's best I hand you over to my colleague, Rob Hammerschmidt, to let you know why it's so cool.
Thanks, Ty. And again, Nick, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have somebody of your station in the league join the Rugby Rant podcast show and the Run, Pass, or Kick interview. And for fans that are out there who have never seen the Run, Pass, or Kick interview style, it works like this. We're going to throw some questions at Nick. We're going to prompt each question with run, pass, or kick. Nick's going to go ahead and tell you, the fans, what he's going to be doing with the question. If he chooses to run with it, he's going to go ahead and answer it, going to take it on the hoof and answer the question straight away. If he chooses to pass a question, it means he wants to stay out of the sights of his boss, Brandon Sparks. And so he's going to let that question go unanswered, or he can have a lot of fun with us, put us on the back foot, make us work, and he can kick a question, which is to say that we're going to answer in a way that we think Nick would answer. And he can make us work a little bit by figuring out who's going to answer it. Whoever asks the question generally will answer it, or he can direct his kick to either Ty or myself to see if we're sleeping on the job. And we'll go ahead and answer the question. And Nick always has the welcome mat open if he wants to go ahead and provide some context, if he wants to tell us we were shite, if he wants to tell us that we were spot on, or if he wants to provide any more background information, it's always welcome. So, Nick, are you ready for the run, pass, or kick challenge, my friend?
most definitely. I'm ready for a good boot today. I'm joking.
All right.
I'll get some runs in there.
Sweet ass.
Hey, rugby fans. Once again, thank you for tuning in and watching us here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. As a friendly reminder, what we do here can certainly not be done week after week without the help of some great partners, one of which deserves a highlight here with Shop MLR, now powered by RugbyNow.com. They are certainly the leaders when it comes to everything Major League Rugby related for you as the fan, so make sure you go and check them out today at shopmlr.com. And their deliveries may ship the very same day, and you could have your kit ready for the next game day.
All right, so I'm going to start us off with the first question here. I'm an old guy. I'm not a young buck like yourself, but I have a LinkedIn profile, and I was checking out your LinkedIn profile. I think I even friended you, by the way, which you gladly accepted, perhaps hastily accepted. I'm not sure which. But nevertheless, in your profile, it indicates that you work to study advanced analytics that includes economics. And you said you believe that pairing these two will lead organizations to better salary cap decisions. So run, pass, or kick. Nick, is your favorite movie Moneyball?
We'll run with that. It's definitely, I love Moneyball. I grew up watching it, and I believe I was like 12 when it came out, something like that. When the actual entire Oakland A's thing went along, 2002, I guess I was 3 years old. So definitely did not live through it, but lived in the post part of it with the movie and everything. And ultimately, like, why I love it so much is it just has a different mindset in terms of baseball. And I always watched that and I was like, this is what I want to do when I grow up. And here I kind of am doing it. We always joke at the Utah Warriors, me and Brandon Sparks, with people that we're trying to make the rugby version of Moneyball. And, he says that because in that scenario, he gets to be Brad Pitt And
You're Jonah Hill then?
You're Jonah Hill?
yeah, so in that instance,
the raw end of the deal, my friend.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's the only chance Brandon Sparks gets to be able to say he's Brad Pitt or gets played by Brad Pitt. So I let him have it. He gets a few wins that way, but I get plenty of others in any other way I want.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's such an important point to be able to look at rugby through a different lens, to be able to view it from different angles. And this is how we take a giant leap forward. But, I wanted folks to be able to recognize just for a moment what some of your background is and how it's applicable and why this is important to you, that strategy. So I'm going to give folks a bit of a highlight here. So you are, as we know it, we mentioned a moment ago, responsible for the advanced statistics and analytics processing that helped the Utah Warriors make some really great finishes in previous seasons. And this has been critical to kind of understanding who goes into the field, forming the roster, salary cap implications, as you mentioned a moment ago. But a lot of this is kind of just really a little bit of the glimpse, the tip of the iceberg for you. I learned that you are also the youngest, correct me if I'm wrong, the youngest player agent registered to the NBA. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I became certified at 21, fresh out of my undergrad, just starting my master's degree at Georgetown, and went right into it and decided why not. And yeah.
So here's a guy that inspired by Moneyball, registered to the NBA, and ends up in rugby.
Exactly.
It's been an unorthodox path, my friend.
Well, look at me. I also, my favorite sport's golf for the sheer fact that I can drive in a golf cart and don't have to run anywhere. So
I love it. Simple dreams, easy to achieve. Yeah. But let's dive into the next question here. And as we continue forward, we're definitely going to learn more about Nick Colling here, and we're going to put it into the test in the run, pass, or kick interview. So run, pass, or kick, my friend. You have also indicated that you were a contestant on the GM school. Now, how valuable was this experience to your role as an assistant GM with the Utah Warriors, in your opinion?
Well, it was actually just about 1 year ago in which the GM school, I guess I better say I'm going to run with it, obviously.
Sure.
It was about 1 year ago in which I was part of the GM school with the NBA. One of the hosts of it was CJ McCollum, guard for now the New Orleans Pelicans now, I guess. But yeah, I was picked as a contestant, and basically the major focus of the show was around sports analytics. And so it kind of paired that together, being able to articulate analytics in a way that fans would be able to understand. And then at the same time, prepare me for instances like this, where I have to go under the gun with two professionals in their own ranks.
You flatter us. You give us way too much credit.
Way too much credit.
Anything I can give you, I'm going to give it to you. So
we're not going to go easy on you.
Ty's a professional. I'm a hack. That's just how it is.
Hey, maybe you're a professional hack. It's still professional.
A professional hack. I'll take that. Absolutely. So, again, kind of looking a little bit of your background, obviously, as your role as assistant GM, you do a lot of analytics. And again, we'll get into some of that. But I believe it's the Warriors website credits you with having originated the Collegiate Rugby Shield. So run, pass, or kick. What was your rationale for creating this event?
I'm going to run with that. It goes back to the fact that I grew up in Utah my whole entire life, and we have dry heat here. And Brandon Sparks took me on a couple scouting trips, and we went to Michigan. We went to St. Charles, Missouri, and they both had way too much humidity for me. And I said, why don't we bring them here so we don't have to travel elsewhere and deal with this humidity? And so we thought there had to be a better way than just simply putting some guys through a couple 20-meter dashes and a couple T drills, those type of things. It was like, there has to be a better way. Not only that, who really knows what a player's worth off of a few athletic kind of combine type events? So we really wanted to steer away from just combines and kind of help professionalize college rugby in the sense of not like actual professional type stuff in terms of paying, but professionalism in which we're going to put a game out there that's going to be broadcasted to the entire world, something that these players haven't been able to deserve for their entire careers, that they've worked effortlessly day in and day out trying to perfect their craft to get to the MLR level. We wanted to be able to give them a way that they can showcase in a game to the fans what they're made of, so that the fans can sit at home and say, oh, I know who Eric Napowski is, who Dallas picked. That's a really good pick. I know who Tavite Lopetti is. That was a really good pick. Oh, now he's with USA. That makes perfect sense. I watched him play. Those type of things. Like, we just want to keep growing the league and then just rugby as a whole to make it something that's closer resemblance to what we know here in America with the NFL, the NBA, the MLB and stuff.
It's interesting that you say that, Nick, because we've done now 2 years running a giraffe show. And it's one of the things that I've really enjoyed because and maybe it's just my connection with my own son being in college, playing for a high profile program. I've just taken a key interest in young players. And I want to see American players continue to develop in this American league. What's interesting to me is I looked at a lot of game film that these players have put out, and they kind of show the highlights, right? This run and that run and then run again, and then a fourth run, and then a fifth run, and then a try, and then another run, and I'm sitting there looking at it going, hey, boss, you're a hooker. I want to see a throw, right? Hey, I'd like to see some tackles. Hey, you're a back row player. Did you ever get a poach? And the beauty of what you're trying to do is GMs, coaches can go there to Harriman and actually see players in the real world playing experience. And I think that, some guys are just not highlight guys, but you watch them work up and down the field and you go, that's a guy that can add a little something to my roster.
Right. Not a lot of the work always gets the glory,
Right.
Yeah. Like within our analytics system, skipping ahead a little bit, but we always we have like our high school academy teams in which all these players, they never want to pass because I want to score the try. I want to score the try. That's the glory. Everybody gives the glory to the try scorer. It's like there's so many other things that go into a try. Right. When you're on the field, you're 1/15th of a player. In the case of the Utah Warriors, at times maybe 1/13th if we're playing LA at some point. But you're 1/15th of the team, and everything that goes into a try has something to thank for. Somebody, at least somebody else on the field, if not almost every single other person on your team. And so we really it's cool to have a highlight film. Yeah, it's nice to easily digest 3 minutes of highlights. But at the end of the day, the reason a team's going to fall in love with a player and really really bank their future on a player is because of that film that they're able to watch and be like, wow, this kid really works hard. And that's somebody like we have on our team, Emerson Pryor. Like one of the major things we saw with him in his film scouting him for the draft was he had an amazing return to action. Like we believe that he's a new age prop in which he is all about this ability to get up off the floor real quick.
Back in the action really fast, right?
You're ready to recycle, ready to run the ball, do all these different things that in kind of more traditional sense of rugby, it's like, oh, we need a good set piece scrum, or we need a good set piece prop that's really going to solidify our scrum. It doesn't really matter what they do on the field rest of the time. They just need to make sure that they're cleaning out the ruck when needed. But other than that, they kind of get lost. So that's why someone like Emerson Pryor definitely stood out. And we really think he was a quite valuable pick at the third round draft pick because he started multiple games for us.
Yeah. And on that note, talking about the young talent that you have and the next generation that's coming, again, we have another iteration of the MLR draft coming up. A lot of people are curious as to what goes on behind closed doors when you think about who you're going to pick. I mean, you get the film, you get that, and you just point out, you're looking for something particular, or maybe you're looking for those skills that fill a gap in your team. But really, the question is to you, what data are you looking for in this next draft?
I mean, really, it comes to what we need. I was talking to Rob earlier, and we kind of can look at our roster and see certain ages of certain players and be like, okay, in a few years, we're going to need someone in like the hooker position. We recently had
so who's kind of like aging out, and what's the next generation?
We had Chad Goff retire, and we were like, okay, we'll probably be needing a hooker in the next couple of years. And although we had great production out of our draft picks this year, starting multiple games, coming off the bench in Joey Baki's case, Connor Burns making a case for possibly Rookie of the Year with all that he did, starting over the Player of the Year last year, Mikey Teo, unbelievable. We don't expect them to come out of the gates that fast, but we love it if they do. And so really what it looks like is more of a multi-year developmental plan in which we can see these players and continue to work on their craft, and having coaches like Sean Davies and Robbie Abel to help in that, who are also just coming out of their professional careers, or in Robbie Abel's case, still in it. They still know that kind of what they need to do to continue to develop. And that development focus helps us guide over multiple years that we can say, okay, this is a position we need. We're going to really focus on these positions this year.
Yeah, and we're going to get into some of those draft picks. I'm glad you brought those three guys up. You've named all three of your draft picks right off the bat. Obviously with Baki, Emerson, Pryor, Burnsy, we'll have a question coming in a little bit about that, so everybody should stick around. Hit the Patreon because you'll get that one later for our Patreon content. I don't want to give it up all the way, right away. So it's at any rate. But I want to get into the next question. So we talked a little bit about the fact that as a part of the Shield, players are going to be in an actual match. I think there's going to be 50 players that are selected to be involved in this. They're being they'll manage their own way out, but once they arrive, they're going to be taken care of by the Utah Warriors, not only put up in housing, but also taken care of as far as their food and other necessities, which is incredible opportunity for a young player when looking to break into the league. But run, pass, or kick, aside from the actual match, what other experiences are draftees going to encounter on the weekend to help them progress to that next level of professionalism?
Oh, most definitely. I'm going to take this with a run, because this is something we pride ourselves with this event. This isn't just a event that it's like, cool, we're going to play a game. Come, let's just play a game. It's hard to play rugby with players that you've never played with before. And maybe some of these guys are teammates. Obviously, Lindenwood's going to have their fair share of invites, your St. Mary's, Life, etc., these big schools. But if you get a kid from, I don't know, Grand Canyon University, or even these big name schools in the American mindset, but like Ohio State, these other schools, it's hard to really come through a mesh. And so what we have provided is not only you're going to come here and stay on our dime, because you shouldn't have to pay for this. We want to help you get to your dream, and we don't want you to pay an arm and a leg to do it. But you're going to be put through multiple days of training under some of the top young coaches in the ranks right now. One being Tui Osborne, who helped St. Bonaventure, obviously, to some great successes over the past few years. And so learning under them and beginning to build a professional environment so they understand what it means to be in the MLR. And it's not an instance where it's like, cool, I'm drafted, now what? You know all the information, what it's like going to be in contract negotiations, those type of things. Like basically a baseline camp for everybody to get to the next level, and then also be able to showcase. And that also goes with these coaches that we're bringing in. We want to make sure that we're providing them a ability to showcase their abilities as coaches to get to the next level. May it be at the assistant coach level, maybe eventually a head coach. But yeah, so players can expect to go through trainings and then also professional development courses in which we're going to have business professionals, local leaders come and talk to these players, talk about what it means to be an adult outside of the college ranks, because it's definitely a wake-up call to some people. And then what is life after rugby? Because it doesn't last forever. It's a sad reality. Back to Moneyball. I think the quote is, one day we're all told we can't play the child's game anymore. Some of us are told at 12, others are told at 40. But we're all told at some time. So when that does come, what are you after? That's one of our philosophies with the Utah Warriors, is not only building great rugby team, building great athletes, but building even better men to go out there and continue into society and keep growing the game through just basically proving themselves as great people.
I love that is kind of at the core of what you're trying to do. You know, it's a wonderful philosophy, and hopefully it echoes across the entire sport, across all the nations, because as you say, these are young men that really are going into the next chapter in their life. And for many of them, it may still include rugby, but what if it doesn't? You know, they're getting a great education, complete that. And the MLR drafters continue to be able to show the importance of that. You know, finish your education. That opportunity will be there waiting for you when the time is right. And even without the draft there's still many other pathways to get to where you want to be. And, you know, Utah is certainly highlighting a different way of getting where you want to be with an entryway to Major League Rugby. And for that, you know, it's what we want. We want as many doors opened for rugby players to reach higher levels of success here on home soil.
Most definitely. The good old phrase that you want to plant seeds for trees that you will never see grow. That's what we want, is to have absolute forests for here in rugby, especially here in Utah, that maybe we never see the fruits of that labor, but it doesn't matter. It grows rugby.
Well, you're a servant to rugby, and we appreciate that. And before we go any farther, we want to be able to remind you, as our viewers tuning in, that you can continue to enjoy more content just like this by following us under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod on all of our social media platforms, continuing to enjoy us, of course, on our home at the Rugby Network. But more importantly, you can continue to enjoy this interview with myself, Rob, and Nick Collings from, of course, the Utah Warriors, as we could venture further into the talk of the Utah Warriors, what's to come, more about this in a moment when we see you at our new home at patreon.com under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod. For the rest of you, we'll continue to be able to provide new content each and every week. Thank you for your support, and we will catch you at the next.